Join me as we investigate Sonnet 12 on why do some people never marry? The Riddles of Gilgulum by the Saba. It's going to be an interesting sonnet because it proves William Shakespeare could not have been the poet. We have traditionally thought this sonnet is about a man observing the motion of a clock and how everything decays over time, even his own beauty. Nothing but children can defy time's scythe. Having discovered the real source documents used by the poet, I'll reveal what it really means. I'm not going to spoil it with an intro because it's quite a long episode, so let's get straight into it. Welcome to this lecture. I'm Peter Matthews. My guest is again Luke Ranieri, reading in OP. Take it away, Luke.
When I do count the clock that tells the time, and say the brave day sunk in hideous night, when I behold the violet past prime, and sable corals all silvered o'er with white, when lofty trees I see bearing leaves, which arst for me did cannot buy the yard, and summer's grain all girded up in shaves, borne on the bare with white and bristly beard. Then of thee beauty do I question make, that thou among the was of time must go, since sweets and beauties do themselves forsake, and die as fast as they see others grow, and nothing gainst time's scythe can make defence, save breed to brave him when he takes the ends.
The two primary source documents for Shakespeare's sonnets, both written in Aramaic and Hebrew, are Zohar Adash, or New Zohar, and the Zohar of Mantua, which printing was supervised by Rabbi Isaac Bassano of the Mantuan Synagogue. The Aramaic text proves it was not written by William Shakespeare, as he could not read Aramaic or Hebrew, and this sonnet delves into the life of the poet Emilia Bassano. There are over 200 sources used by the poet that are written in Aramaic, Hebrew, Latin, Italian, and Old Mantuan, which is an ancient Emilian dialect prior to the Romans. And by the way, it's still spoken today in northern Italy. In Zohar 1, 5b to 6a, the protagonist, in true Bassano form, appears to be a rambling donkey driver goading behind the rabbis, though really he is the son of the eminent Rav Hamnuna Saba, commonly known as the Saba. These rabbis are walking through walking through ancient Galilee, and he's just rambling along, talking away, and just in parables, similar to the way that Jesus taught. Very interesting indeed the way this text discusses it, and I'm going to open it up, and this is the key. This is the key to Sonnet 12. Now, the donkey driver poses several riddles in this case to Rabbi Abba, who didn't quite understand his wisdom at first. After Rabbi Eliezer interjected, Rabbi Abba allowing the donkey driver to share his wisdom on Shahar ha-Gilgulum, which is the Gates of Reincarnation. In essence, the cycles of the soul through incarnations of time, which they discussed along the road. It is only fitting that Emilia used the number 12, for Lamed is the 12th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, or 12 can also represent the two Vavs. 12 represents the luminaries, or the Saba, the Blessed Holy One, the perfect order of Jerusalem, the 12 gates of the temple, or the 12 tribes, the 12 pearls, the perfect subdivision of time. 12 hours in a day, 12 months of the year, 12 primary constellations, and of people, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles of Christ, and the river Dinar of dark waters flowing from Jerusalem, from which the luminaries flow out. 12 reveals a holy people serving a holy God based on the Creator's clock and calendar. Interesting, isn't it, as we open this sonnet up? The image of Elohim, or Jesus Christ, God. And I know my Jewish friends won't agree with that, but maybe in time you will, because one day he'll reveal himself to all the Jewish people. Now, at the age of 12, he discussed Torah with the Pharisees at Passover festival at Jerusalem, which is in Luke 2:41-52, if you want to look it up. This is at the age of his bar mitzvah. Now, I know a lot of the rabbis tried to teach that, the ancient ones certainly, that he was not actually Jewish. And that's not the case. He fulfilled all of his mitzvot in his lifetime. Emilia folds this incredible wisdom in 3 layers of Shahar ha-Gilgalim, or the Gates of Reincarnation, with the understanding of Zohar Hadash, Midrash Anilim 13a to 13d, and the Zoharic portion of Idra Rabbah 3 129b to 130b, where she investigates the 4 winds of the Ancient of Days in the days of King Messiah. Yeah, quite incredible, actually. This is the intention behind the Saba and the poet who raise parallels to real pregnancy and creation itself, dealing with the questions like, why do some people never marry? What happens to the soul of a person who dies without having children? Why do innocent children die young? The answers are found as we investigate Sonnet 12. Some flow over into Sonnet 13. The rabbis were discussing the countenance of Shekinah from the Sephir of Malkut and the positive and negative influences between the physical world as governed by angels and the upper worlds. Despite us going about our day, most times we do not see that angels work in every facet of creation, and even in our lives, every day the 4 winds from the 4 directions of the world blow. And the dark Shulamite beckons the king, awake, north wind, rise up, south wind, blow on my garden, and spread its fragrance around the world. Come into your garden, my love, taste its finest fruits. Song of Songs 4:16. And I'll show how it involves the sonnet very shortly. But we have to delve into these things first so that we understand the source documents and where it comes from. Above the gate of the east is a treasury called Beloved Treasury, containing 3,075 healing breezes for the world. And during the mornings, people of the world enjoy some respite from their illnesses governed by the Archangel Michael. For it is written, look, my angel will lead the way before you. And when I come to call the people to account, I will certainly hold them responsible for their sins. Exodus 32:34. The wind now changes to blow from the west, from midday to sunset, with 465 breezes flowing from the fountain treasury that makes all trees, plants, and crops thrive, governed by the Archangel Raphael, who is the angel of healing. Yet God reversed the order, for Raphael reverses the winds, so the people will call out to God in repentance, and then he will bring healing according to God's command. So this gives us a little understanding of the source documents. The donkey driver asks, what is the snake that flies through the air and goes about all alone with an ant resting between its teeth? What a question to ask. I think I'd be thinking, who is this guy? Well, this is the Saba's first riddle of the Gates of Reincarnation, essentially meaning, what is the lot of a person who does not fulfill the mitzvah? Or, to the most people today, why did they not marry and have children? After all, this is what people have long believed the sonnets were about, but they are far more than this sonnet alone. This is why Rabbi Abba said, let us open the gates of Torah, as it is time to correct our path. Hence the poet begins with, when do I count the clock that tells the time, and see the brave day sunk in hideous night? When I behold the violet past prime, and sabre curls or silvered oars with white, when lofty trees I see barren of leaves. To understand this passage, we must refer again to Zohar Adash, Midrash Anilim 14b, which belongs to Sonnet 13, though it explains quite a bit. Israel counts by the moon, and idolaters by the sun. The Blessed Holy One scrutinizes every day, or should I say night, but executes judgment only at these 4 times: Passover, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, and Sukkot, to judge the entire world. Sonnet 12 deals with the scrutiny every night, whereas Sonnet 13 deals with the judgment on Passover, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, and Sukkot. Yeah, that's what it's about. Now, you try and tell me that this was written by William Shakespeare, a Christian Stratfordian man who could not read Aramaic and Hebrew, but this is what the sonnet is about. It's not possible. The south wind blows from sunset to midnight when we see the brave day sunk in hideous night, with 275 breezes from the beloved treasury where the archangel Uriel overpowers. This is a time when the ill are oppressed and the wicked are judged in the fires of hell. This is a time where the entire world is sound asleep and there is nobody to pray on their behalf. The north wind is where we are called to give account. Awake, north wind, rise up. South wind, blow on my garden and spread its fragrance all around. Come into my garden, my love, taste its finest fruits. Song of Songs 4:16. See, the Blessed Holy One enters at midnight, and the spices of the balsam trees in the Garden of Eden give off a sweet aroma, singing in his presence. For it is written, let the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he is coming to judge the earth. 1 Chronicles 16:33. In essence, it is cycles of reincarnations of souls throughout time, sometimes because of sin, a tragic accident, or sometimes in order to marry his soulmate, as taught by the eminent Kabbalist Rabbi Isaac Luria. Where his soul ascends on high, it flutters about in the air and cannot settle. It does not find a partner. It goes about alone and unproductive, like a snake in the world. For all animals go about in pairs, other than the snake, which travels by itself. When this soul descends again into a body, it does not find a mate and remains alone, with an ant resting between its teeth. Well, what does the ant mean? The ant refers to the soulmate of the man. She is lost to him now because he had refused to marry her and fulfill the mitzvah of having children. While he undergoes Gilgal, the ant, his designated wife, rests between his teeth, for he constantly thinks about her, grinding his teeth in anger at himself for not having married her when he had the opportunity. She, however, finds solace in the other man she marries. Thus, he began with union and ended with separation. Before his soul ascended into a body for the first time, his soulmate was announced. He began with union of his soul and that of his designated soulmate. This time, before his soul descended for a second time, no announcement was made. He ended with separation as half a person, since he descended without his soulmate. Pretty sad, actually. This, of course, was expounded from the Zohar. The poet used this passage of the Zohar to draw the parable of the Saba into her own poetry with, "When do I count the clock that tells the time? For time is gone to correct our path, for it is already midnight." Emilia tells the story of how she was raped from a young age, and a H.W., assumedly Henry Wriothesley, 3rd Earl of Southampton, violently assaulted her. Carey offered secret gifts, and Emilia tells how she lived as a chaste wife in wedlock shalt endure. Most people believe Alfonso, her husband, treated her harshly before he died on the 20th of September 1613. Emilia understood the doctrine of Gilgalim applied to men who reincarnate and not to women, who stay forever stationary or still. They do not return to Gilgal. For a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains stationary forever. Ecclesiastes 1:4. This is the teaching of Rabbi Isaac Luria, taught by Kabbalists around the world for generations. Emilia wept over her violet past prime, meaning to most Kabbalists she could not reincarnate. I'll make note here that there are a few exceptions, though Emilia was not one of them. I know righteous women who connect above each night and underpin creation, just as it is taught for men. Therefore, I believe the teaching applies for women just as it applies for men, apart from reincarnation. This is the element that Emilia laments. Clearly, Emilia believed men can reincarnate, but women cannot. Therefore, they should prepare themselves in this life, ready for their ascension upon death. After all, this is the topic of the Sonnets, eternal life. A woman can reincarnate for the sake of a husband, as mentioned in the Saba of Mishpatim on the verse, "But if he was married before he became a servant, then his wife must be freed with him." Exodus 21:3. I believe there are exceptions to the rule. I will cover more on this in the later sonnets on Mishpatim. Emilia wept over her violet past prime because of her family heritage as Rex Judaeorum. As I traced the Bassano and Nasi Benvenisti family lineages back to the house of David, the same lineages of Jesus who wore a scarlet robe, and when they're talking about a scarlet robe, they're talking about the Tyrian purple gland found in the 3 kinds of sea snails, commonly called rock snails amongst the Israel's coastline. The dye likely created both the argamon, or the purple, and the chocolate, the blue, both mentioned in the Bible in the Old Testament and cited in Matthew 27, verse 28. Thus Emilia wept over the temple of Jerusalem that had been destroyed, yet she looks forward to the third temple. The Bassano Nasi family originated from both the house of David and the Levites, the priests and musicians. Therefore, Emilia had a strong connection to the temple. It is a reflection of the purple linen ephod, or the robe, mentioned in Exodus 28, 6-8, that was worn dancing in the presence of the Ark of the Covenant and worn by the priest in the Holy of Holies. And the first and second temple period, the proto-evangelium of James, chapter 9, tells us the connection of women of the house of David, silk, and the true purple worn by Jesus, created by his mother, the Virgin Mary. And I think I might read that just so that you can understand the background on it. And the priest remembered the child Mary, that she was of the family of David and undefiled before God. And the officers went away, and they brought them into the temple of the Lord. And the priest said, "Choose for me by lot who shall spin the gold and the white and the fine linen and the silk and the blue and the scarlet and the true purple." And the true purple and the scarlet fell to the lot of Mary, and she took them, and she went away to her house. And Mary took the scarlet and span it. And at that season Zacharias became dumb, and Samuel was in his stead until the time when Zacharias spoke again. But Mary took the scarlet and began to spin it. So it's talking about the robes of Christ. A violet in the youth of primy nature is a very clever imagery taken from Act 1, Scene 3 of Hamlet, a work no doubt penned by her father, Battista Bassano, who studied at the University of Padua before emigrating to England. And it reads, "For Hamlet and the trifling of his favours, hold it a fashion and a toy in blood, a violet in the youth of primy nature, froward, not permanent, sweet, not lasting." See, primy nature is to depict the most active time during creation, where every day is a new day. Now, Emilia's sabre curls of dark hair are taken directly from the description of Anpin, or the long countenance of Kita, or the Ancient of Days, in Idra Rubba and Zohar 130b, describing the first enhancement, beginning with the dark curls of hair of the head arrayed above the ears through Nukva, which we mentioned in the previous sonnet. The feminine, the Patsrut of Malkut. It's referring to the Ancient of Days mentioned in Daniel's vision. His clothing was as white as snow, his hair like purest wool. Daniel 7:9. we can understand Emilia's verse comparing the long face, or Archampen, the long face, the long countenance, being the father who begat Zerenpin, or short face, the son, and compares them to the Ancient of Days, where she beholds them. They are one. They are one. What's that from? Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4. And she mentions here, and Saba curls, or silvered ore with white. Creator and upholder of all things. Instead of lofty trees, when she looked in the mirror, it reflected a tree of barren leaves, a barrenness of life without children to continue her lineage. But the Zohar also tells us that even since Adam left the Garden of Eden, he took with him the wisdom of the leaves of the tree. Now, I'll interrupt this for a moment because, you see, Emilia saw that her children and her grandchildren would not survive. Her lineage died out. She saw in advance what would happen. It's incredible when you look into what this sonnet is really talking about. It blows your mind. So what she's talking about here is in relation to the tree of good and evil. Thus, the reading of this passage, we must understand we possess the ability to discern both good and evil. And we must use this wisdom to reject negative angels or demons who try to influence our lives, and instead welcome the positive angels into our lives. Now, if Emilia taught on this in her time, the entire family would have been murdered because they couldn't teach on this. Women who taught on angelology and demonology were put to death by King James. Now, Midrash Anilam Ketz La Hadura 82 tells us that when the Blessed Holy One creates humans, he gave us two angels. You know, they talk about psychology with, because part of my Bachelor of Social Science, I had to study psychology, even though I didn't particularly like it. And you study the Red Book and how he had an angel on one side and a demon on the other that was talking to him. And one is of mercy and compassion, and the other judgment. Now, why judgment? For correction. That's why he gave us the demon as well, to correct our path. And if we don't see that and we continue to listen to that, it can lead us astray. Now, Sonnet 12 is written in a style like the Song of Songs, where the young woman would have a few verses, then the young man. So Emilia wrote to tell us clearly, when do I count the clock that tells the time, and assess whether you have your destined soulmate or not. For those who have found your soulmate to canopy your herd, then you are blessed, summer's green. For those who have not found your destined soulmate, it is time to correct your path or face another life of going around the mountain, a cycle of reincarnations, until you meet that soulmate that you are destined to be with. Don't wait until you are barren of leaves. Do it now. The second riddle of the donkey driver asks, and what is the eagle that makes her nest in a tree that never was? Her children were stolen away, but not as created beings, For they were created in a place where there is no creation. When they ascend, they descend, and when they descend, they ascend. Two are one, and one is three. Imagine being asked that. Oh, you'd probably think the guy was mad. Again, the teaching of the eminent Rabbi Isaac Luria explains the text for us. Behind this question lies the mystical interpretation of the Jewish commandment of the levirate marriage. If a man dies without having any children, then his brother is obligated, or his brothers are obligated by the Torah to marry the deceased brother's widow, called the Yevamot. The three portions in Babylonian Talmud are Yevamot, Eruvin, and Nidar, with a Hebrew mnemonic, which is a poetic device called Ani in Hebrew, meaning poverty, which is why Emilia's works are so misunderstood. They assumed Emilia was living in poverty, but she was teaching on her Jewish Kabbalistic beliefs. If only they looked through the eyes of a Jewish woman, they would have understood her works. So, if a brother-in-law marries her and has children, he perpetuates the name of his deceased brother. And that's from Deuteronomy 25:5. Now, in this situation with this riddle, the eagle here alludes to the Yevamah, the woman, after the death of the husband, who must make a nest or marry in a tree that never was. That's if the brothers reject her, that is, in a nest that never was. Now, that can be to one of the brothers, or it can be a man who was not intended for her. A man is compared to a tree in Deuteronomy 20, verse 19. See, had the woman's husband divorced her, she would be forbidden to have any of his brothers during her lifetime. But this was not the case. Her children were stolen away, and that's the quote refers to the children she could theoretically have had with her first husband who died, and whose soul now enters the children she will have with the brother or the other person who was never intended for her to marry. And I'm just using the paraphrase version because if I go into what Luria actually wrote, it's quite deep and just a lot of Hebrew words that don't make a lot of sense to most people today. Now, the children that she could have born are not created beings that were stolen from her, having never actually been born. It says, now the quote where when they ascend, this is talking about when the soul of people who die without leaving children ascend from the bodies they occupied. Alternatively, when the brother and the former wife ascend to become the parents of the deceased, then the soul of the deceased descends into the child. So, if the husband dies and the wife marries the brother, then they allege that the soul of the brother actually is reincarnated into the son. So by fulfilling the commandment and allowing the deceased soul to descend into the body in order to perpetuate his name, the woman and the new husband are actually raised to a higher spiritual level, or they ascend. Thus the two are one. The deceased and the newborn are one soul. And the one is three, coming back to the riddle. The newborn is endowed with three souls. one from the deceased, one from the mother, and the third from the Blessed Holy One. Thus there is a distinct advantage in Yibum over the regular Gilgul. Namely, a child can acquire all three levels of the soul, Nefesh, Ruah, and Neshama, in a single lifetime, rather than reincarnating to acquire them. There's actually 5 levels in total, which we've discussed already. Now, here we can understand why Emilia was so upset at innocent Lania, knowing her Jewish Kabbalistic beliefs of Gilgulim, Yubim, and Yavam. Now, Yavam is basically the brother of the deceased. Innocent Lania had the opportunity to do the right thing by his brother and Emilia by Yibum, or Goel. The latter, Goel, includes avenging the blood of his relative. So he could have married his brother's widow in order to have a son for his brother, in case the brother had not any sons to pass the name forth, Deuteronomy 25, 5-6, and to receive restitution if the injured relative had died, Numbers 5:8. The alternative is Halazar, where innocent or clement Lania could have released her to marry again. So there's no record of this ceremony ever occurring in court documents. Whilst both brothers could not marry Emilia as they were already married, each of them could have made her a nest from the sonnet. In other words, had her remarried in a tree that never was, a man who was not intended for her to care for her needs. Her husband Alfonso had erst from heat, did canopy the herd. Speaking of previously did canopy her herd, or looked after her and her children, but both of her brothers failed in their duties as Yubom and Halazar by refusing to remarry or at least perform the mitzvah, or the Halazar for the soul of her deceased husband to come back in Gilgal through her. Emilia handed over her inherited hay and grain patent from her husband, Alfonso Lania, to Clement Lania in a type of Goal situation. We do not know whether she was coerced. It was done on the understanding that he would split the proceeds with Emilia, which is also mentioned in Numbers 5:8. Emilia was forced to proceed with legal action against Clement Lania in the 1630s, and the court awarded Emilia £20, although Clement failed to pay. Thus, Emilia pursued him to recover the debt, but it's unclear whether Emilia ever received any money owed. Now, so the sonnet is talking about the life of Emilia Bassano, etched within these Kabbalistic verses. It's quite incredible, really, how she did this. The third riddle the donkey driver asks is, who is the beautiful maiden without eyes, whose body is concealed and revealed, who comes out in the morning and disappears during the day, who is adorned with ornaments that never were? Well, again, the teaching of Rabbi Isaac Luria gives some understanding. It refers to the pure and unsullied neshama. Yeah, like the TV series, The Unsullied. The unsullied neshama, or the maiden, that has merited to ascend to Gan Eden as a result of its good deeds, and therefore it is called beautiful. Without eyes is the neshama that cannot be seen. However, the neshama is clothed in the lower level of ruah, which is called its body when compared with the neshama. This level of ruah is concealed. In other words, it's not a physical body, and is revealed, or compared with the even more concealed neshama, it is regarded as revealed. It comes out in the morning because after midnight, towards morning, the Holy One, blessed be He, descends with all the souls of Sarakim from the upper aspect of Gan Eden. His Nefesh and Ruah ascend while he is asleep and remain above. When he wakes up in the morning, only the Neshama will descend. If he succeeds in rectifying the Neshamas well, then the Ruah and Nefesh will descend into the same body. The Nefesh will become the vehicle for his Ruah, and the Ruah for the Neshama, and he will no longer be required to return in Gilgal. Yeah, pretty deep. The Kabbalah Center explained these two a little bit more, and I'll run through that. A human being below in this world has an image and a form, but he does not last forever, as do those of the angels above. The form and image of these angels above are formed in their shape without any other covering. Because of this, they are everlasting. The image of man in this world below, referring to the Neshama, the Nefesh, the Ruah, is shaped into its form only by a covering. Because of this, man lasts only for a certain limited period. Every night when a man sleeps, his spirit removes the covering and ascends. The fire that consumes fire, namely the female principle of Zer Anpin, consumes and burns the spirit. Later the spirits are resurrected and reshaped into their coverings as before. Because of this, the spirits have no permanent existence, as do the images above, which is a reference to the angels of the herb, but are burned and then renewed as before. About this it is written, they are new every morning. They are new every morning. Lamentations 3:23, which refers to the spirit of human beings, which are renewed daily. What is the purpose of this renewal? The verse concludes that great is your faithfulness from the same verse. So it is great and not small. Emilia had used a double meaning to reflect how she had borne on the bier, or borne on a mortuary trolley with white and bristly beard, referring to her children. The white and bristly beard is from the Zoharic portion of Idra Rabbah, where Emilia pleads before El Shaddai for mercy from the death of her children. I do not believe she used an Ovidian imagery in this case, as suggested by a number of others. Emilia disguised this verse to discuss her children. Henry Lanier, who was born in 1593 and passed away at the age of 40 in 1633, and her daughter Odelia Lanier, December 1598 to September 1599. So she passed away at 9 months of age. And Emilia had no descendants, basically, where she described since sweets, talking about Henry, and beauties, talking about Odelia, do themselves forsake, meaning God had forsaken them, and they die as fast as they see others grow. Emilia was a prophetess. We must understand this. There is prophecy right throughout the sonnets, and she must have foreseen her lineages disappearing. The pain of that would have been incredible, but she turned to her poetry. That's the meaning behind the sonnet. It's about Emilia's children. Though the hidden meaning for sweet and beauty are found in Zohar Adash 13c, speaking of the sweet and beautiful aromas that trickle down upon the entire world from the upper Garden of Eden. The birds that fly above them are the Sarakim, the righteous, where nothing is lacking, like the vessels of a mother's womb on the day of creation. There is a greater teaching on Gilgulim for the male soul in a female body that may shed further light on this subject. However, I will leave this discussion for the later sonnets on the Saba of Mishpatim. You can also read, if you're interested, on the face, Seekers of the Face by Dr. Melila Helner Eshed of the Shalom Hartman Institute. It is a Zoharic commentary on Idra Rabbah. It must have been a difficult time for Emilia to see others grow and their children die as fast as they see others grow. Yet she still firmly believed in God, hoping her children flew above the garden. She tells of her struggles that nothing against time's scythe can make defence. Though we know she spent her time teaching and writing these magnificent works for us. The final verse is the icing on the cake. The donkey driver discusses a certain tower, soaring in the air, grand and splendid. Those dwelling in this tower are the Blessed Holy One and a certain poor person. This is where I reside. Now, the soaring tower refers to the Tower of David, an ancient citadel near the Jaffa Gate in the old city of Jerusalem, and it's described in the Song of Songs 4:4. Your neck is as beautiful as the Tower of David, jewelled with shields of 1,000 heroes. Song of Songs 4:4. Emilia gave everything she had to the poor and the education of children who could not afford it. She is a hero. The Saba taught, this is where I reside with the Blessed Holy One, referring to Zechariah 9:9. Rejoice, O people of Jerusalem. Shout in triumph, O people of Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, yet he is humble, riding on a donkey colt. Zechariah 9:9. Emilia understood to save the breed was to brave him in the face of dangers, like the Apostle Paul. And that is paraphrasing the sonnet. Until the day he takes thee hence. One only has to read the story of Jesus blessing the little children in Mark chapter 10, verse 13 to 16, to understand Emilia's faithful heart towards her king. According to Rabbi Moshe Miller, the tree of knowledge of good and evil runs everything in this world, and when the world's inhabitants act righteously, the scales tip on the side of good. Great is your faithfulness is a female principle in this passage of the Zohar, that it was good, where Elohim, or God, saw that all that he had made and was pleased with creation. We should follow Emilia's lead and of her ancestors, including King David, who rose at midnight, at the hour when the Blessed Holy One delights with the righteous in the Garden of Eden. This is exactly when Gabriel blows in a northerly direction, and our praises and prayers rise up as a sweet-smelling aroma to tip the scales to the side of good in the world. What an incredible sonnet, revealing the real poet, Emilia Bassano Lanier. If you are really keen to read more on the subject, study the prologue of the Zohar, chapter 12. Now, I wanted to release a special episode on Passover because Sonnets 13 and 19 discuss the order of Passover, printed in the same year in Venice as the Sonnets by the Bassanos, etched within these very verses. Unfortunately, I was unable to do so. You might have noticed I am struggling to breathe in some of my videos. Though we have used pretty well every technique possible to try and eliminate the sounds of my struggles, you might have noticed I mispronounce words at times and I struggle to get the words out. That's because I have 2 collapsed lungs from a previous gallbladder surgery last year. I had a gangrenous gallbladder and they had to burn my liver and burn the bottom of my lung. And I've struggled ever since. This is why I decided to release all of my research now while I still can. I hope to finish it all, but if I can't, I'm hoping that students and other scholars out there will continue it on for me. I'm going to ask you to pray for me and my family as I pray for mercy and blessing upon you and yours. Now, for the upcoming episodes. Sonnet 13 is on the rock and 4 judgments. It continues on from Sonnet 12, distinguishing the difference between the righteous and the wicked. Sonnet 14 is a date with truth and beauty. Sonnet 15 is on Adam and Lilith and what is to come. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Sonnet 16 is on the purity of Torah. Sonnet 17 is on the 22 letters and 231 gates. Sonnet 18 is on Nema, the mother of all things. Sonnet 19 is on the telling of Passover, before we move into Lech Lecha, on the patriarch Abraham. Subscribe now so you don't miss them. Thanks for watching and bless you all heaps.